right-hand side. And it was peeking from behind a big tree. It had its hand bracing itself on the trunk of the tree, and it was peering around the left side of the tree down the hill looking at me. And I thought to myself, this is the biggest black bear I've ever seen in my life. So I pulled the gun up just to check it out, and that's when I noticed it didn't have a muzzle like a bear. It had a nose. And that's whenever I brought the gun down, and I shoot a 30-06 with a 3x9 scope on top of it. So I cranked the scope power up so I can get a real good look at it. And then that's when I start seeing details and how human-like this creature is. It had a very flat nose, almost like a boxer where it's been broken multiple times. And the nostrils were real flared. And you could actually see the nostrils flare every time it breathed. I got probably 30-second look at it before it realized that I was pointing a gun at it, because you could see in its facial expressions that it went from, what are you doing, to, uh-oh, this ain't good. And the mouth dropped, the eyes widened, and the nose actually flared. And the details were so clear. The head was a little bit of a cone shape. It had probably 4-inch long hair on the top of the head and down around the sides of the head. The cheekbones were very high up and very wide, and they were covered with about 1.5 to 2-inch long hair. The nose was covered with about inch long hair down to about where the crook of the nose is. From there, it was just black skin. The lips were black, and they were very protruding, almost like they were shot with Botox or something. But it was the eyes that really got me. The eyes were probably about 2 to 3 inches apart, and they were probably about 3 inches in width. And most of the eye was pupil, with very little white of the eye showing. And the pupils were, I would describe it like a shark's eye. It was just black, almost expressionless. But I could see whenever it looked and it did that uh-oh look that it was intelligent, because it had to have recognized the gun that I was pointing at it. And that is when it decided that it was going to stand up. And it was like a athlete finishing a squat. It went from a squatting position just straight up. And it turned, and when it turned to the left, turned around, took about a step and a half, and was into the mountain laurel. It was only maybe a minute and a half encounter. And I never saw the creature again.
And what did you do next? Did you get out of there, or?
Actually, no. I wanted to see how big this thing truly was, because there was a tree limb above it, and when it stood up, the head literally looked like it was touching the branch. And so I went up the hillside, and I had the rifle in one hand, I had the pistol in the other, because I decided if this thing was in the mountain laurel right there, I was firing one shot with the rifle, dropping it, and I was emptying the pistol, because I was carrying a .357 Magnum as well.
How far away from you was this thing when you were looking at it through your scope?
About 150 yards, no more.
And what did you think you were looking at the time? Obviously, it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a man. What did you think it was?
I've always believed that Sasquatch did exist, but I didn't think it would exist in Pennsylvania due to how many people are around in this area. And the Queehana Wild area where I was is a tourist attraction during the spring and summer, because it is the home of our elk herd, and it's the only herd in Pennsylvania. But the second day of gun season, that at that time, there was nobody in the woods. I went the first day without even seeing a hunter. At first, whenever I seen it, I was like, this is the biggest person I ever seen in my life, until I got the scope on a higher power and was like, this thing ain't a person. It is massive. And I would say the shoulders on it were probably 48 inches across. The chest was just absolutely insane. I probably put the measurements around the chest at over 80 inches.
Did it look more like a man, or did it look more like an animal when you were looking at it through the scope?
Almost a cross between a man and an animal, because like I said, the facial expressions and the eyes and the nose, they were human. But the hair that covered the entire face, head, and body almost reminded me of a black bear, because the hair on the body was probably 3-4 inches in length, like it was on the top of the head. But the face, the entire face except the eyes and the bottom of the crook of the nose down to the lip, was hairless. And the lips were hairless.
And did you tell anyone about this